Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Okay, so I forgot that yesterday Zoom started something where you have to have a password. So I totally forgot, but thank you for reminding. Uh, okay, thank you for reminding. I'm gonna just give it an extra couple of minutes since people have to use a password to start, inshallah. All right, there we go. Admit everybody, okay, alhamdulillah. Admit everybody, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay, I see that some of y'all did the challenge on the app. I'm very proud of you. I was gonna read off who those were, but I think my daughter's using my phone to join in the other room, so I will get you. I did check and I did see some of you did complete that challenge, and I'm so proud of you. Some of you said I did Nuffle after this time. I did 2 rakats here. Inshallah, y'all are doing great, and inshallah, you're gonna get a wonderful little prize at the end. And as soon as I can make that list, I will let you know. So I think let's go ahead and get started. We waited a few minutes. So today, inshallah, we are going to be, inshallah, we're going to be talking about 2 surahs. So we are on Juz 15, and we are going to be going at a little bit more than 1 Juz a day, because we have 10 days that we're going to be meeting, and we're going to finish 15 juz in that time. So today we have these 2 surahs. They're really nice surahs. Inshallah, in Juz 15, we have Surah Isra, followed by Surah Al-Kahf. So, admit everybody. Okay, so we're going to start with Surah Isra. And this is this surah that tells us that this Surah Isra tells us about the truth that the Prophet ﷺ took a night journey where he actually traveled to Jerusalem. He went to Jannah. He got to go to a supernatural journey, which the evidence is right here at the beginning of the surah. So Surah Isra says, "Glory be to the one who took his servant on a journey by night from the sacred place of prostration in Mecca to the faraway place of prostration in Jerusalem, to an area we've specially blessed so we could show him some of our signs. Truly, he's the one who hears and observes all things." So there's an entire journey that the Prophet took, and people who were really believers like Abu Bakr and the true believers, they believed him. And he had never been to places like Jerusalem before, but Abu Bakr had been there before. So whenever the Prophet described these locations, Abu Bakr was like able to tell that, yeah, that's really the truth, because that's exactly what Jerusalem looks like and such. But there are, of course, people that are not going to believe. And so this is one of the miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This surah has several teachings and rules for us. I want to tell you in verse 9, it says, "This Quran certainly guides people towards stability in their lives and societies and gives good news to the believers who do what's morally right, that they shall have a great reward." Once again, a promise from Allah that if you follow what's in the Quran and the teachings that He gives us based on your faith, then there's a good news for you. That news is that if you do what's morally right, you're going to have a great reward. And our definition of morally right is, of course, defined by the way that Allah has taught us and the example of the Prophet. That's what we consider to be morally right. Then it says in verse 15, "No bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another." You see how in this dunya, your mother is always trying to help you and do things. And, at Sehri, when you don't feel like, getting up, she's the one coming and calling you again and again. And she will warm up your food and she'll help you and she'll take you to school. And if you forget your lunch, she'll come drop something off. Right now, your mother, let's say, is helping you. But what Allah is telling us in verse 15 is, on that day, no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another, okay? So we're not going to have mom, dad, friends, TV shows, nothing. Nobody will come to our aid. We're going to be super duper lonely, only with the deeds that we earned, okay? And at the same time, on the other hand, If somebody else does something wrong, we should know that they're going to have to deal with it on that day. We cannot help somebody who did something wrong, whether it's that wrong to us or themselves or someone else. Everybody has to bear their own burdens that day. It says, and you know, we have little examples. Like, have you ever been in a group project where some people slack off and then all the load gets on, you know, one person or two people? That can happen in this dunya, but in the akhirah, that's not going to happen. Everybody has to be responsible and carry their own weight. So in verse 18, Allah says, whoever desires the temporary things of this world will have them in whatever quantity we wish to give. But afterwards, we're going to give them hellfire so they can burn within it in humiliation and disgrace. So in this world, if somebody wants to fill their desires in the wrong way, Allah is not gonna like stop them necessarily. You can fill your desires. If you want to go do something wrong, you have the freedom to do something wrong in this world, but there is a consequence in the akhirah. It says, whoever desires the next life, who makes an effort to achieve it as is required and who has faith, their efforts will be appreciated by Allah. So you have to decide for yourself. You know, everyone here, you are young women. Right now, you're still under the protection and care of your parents, but you're growing up. You have to decide to commit your own self, you know, to what's important to you. And you have to choose the next world if you want what is good for you. So it says, whoever desires the next life, and when it says who makes an effort to achieve it, so that includes making the effort. So we talked before about things like getting up for Fajr. We talked about giving up things that are haram. We talked about sacrificing, sharing the things that Allah asked, obeying the people that Allah asked. So you have to make an effort, right? And it says, and who has faith, their efforts will be appreciated by who? By Allah. So when you do these things, it's not for people. You know, it is for Allah, right? And sometimes if you are blessed and lucky and in the right situation, there are some people who will appreciate you and be with you, but really there's times when you're tested when nobody will appreciate what you're doing except for Allah. It says, have you noticed how we've given more to some than others? However, the next life is a higher status and greater blessing awaits. So Allah is telling us in verse 21 of Surah Isra that the next life is the true life that we need to value. In this life, Allah gives different things to different people. Some people may look like they have more or less. It's all a test, right? Somebody has 2 children to deal with. Somebody has 7 children to deal with. Somebody has this, somebody has that. There's all different tests that people have. But Allah is saying, don't focus on that. Focus on passing the test that was given to you. And it says in verse 23, your Lord has decided that you must serve no one else but him, and that you should be kind to your parents. Whether one or both of them becomes old in your lifetime, never speak to them rudely or scold them, but rather speak to them in generous terms. This is a Kahoot question. So there's a Kahoot question that says to fill in the blank. You should be kind to who? And so you should remember this verse in verse 23. Then in 24, kindly lower the wing of humility towards them and say, my Lord, be merciful to them, even as they cherished me when I was small. So today is Mother's Day, but every day in Islam is Mother's Day. It says, your Lord knows what's in your heart, so behave in a moral fashion. Then he is forgiving to those who repent for their sins. Give what is rightly due to your relatives, the needy and the stranded travelers. Don't waste your money like a squanderer. So first of all, Allah gave us everything we have. We're going to see the stories later in Surah Al-Kahf that when people sometimes have something, there's a story of 2 men with 2 gardens. So, you know, we'll learn about that one later, but, you know, anything we have, we may think we earned it, but it was given to us by Allah. Everything we have, even our own bodies, our own life, it all belongs to Allah. So Allah is saying to give what's rightly due to relatives, okay? And so think about it, you know, imagine if you were the poor person. What if you had parents and somehow one of you, you know, maybe you were from a very poor country, right? And you had parents and there's 2 siblings, for example. One of them happened to go to maybe a very rich country and they got to make lots and lots of money. And then one day you're in a really bad situation. You're in a terrible situation and your kids are sick and people are, you know, they don't have enough food. They don't have, you know, you would feel that, you know, you wish that you had a sibling who's doing really well, that they would just share a little bit with you. right? So you would want that too. Allah is saying you have to be fair and share and give people their due, right? And so Allah gives people different things to test them. It says the needy, the stranded, travelers. So other people that are that deserve from us are needy and stranded travelers. It says, do not waste your money like a squanderer. So there are people out there who, when they have money, some people even when they don't have enough, they squander their money, right? Have you seen people who gamble and just literally like, it's like they think it's like cool to like throw money away? Don't do that. You should, you know, value your money. And it says, don't tie your hand to your neck like the miser. So don't be so stingy. You know, that's not the quality of a Muslim. It says, nor extend it out so far in donating that you become guilty of causing your own poverty. So Allah is not telling you to give away everything you have until you and your family are suffering. He wants what's good for you. He's just saying, just be in the middle, you know, don't be stingy, don't give away everything. Just be, you know, in the middle, but share and give what you're supposed to give. It says, your Lord provides abundant resources to whomever he wants, and he measures out similar resources to whomever he wants. For sure, he is well informed and watcher over the needs of his servants. So it's Allah who will provide, okay? And so in verse 32, it says, don't go anywhere near an unlawful intimate activity, for it's a shameful practice and opens the way to even greater sins and dangers. I want to just dwell on this just a little bit, because here Allah is telling us to not go near shameful deeds. So what does it mean to not go near a shameful deed? So if I say, like I'm looking at a tree in my front yard, and if I say, okay, don't touch that tree, versus don't go near that tree. Is there someone who can tell me if those are exactly the same thing? Is it the same thing to say don't touch the tree or don't go near the tree? Is there anyone who can tell me if those are exactly the same thing, or if there's a difference between the two? Here, let me see if I can unmute everybody. Who can tell me? Is that the exact same thing? Or is there a difference?
No, I don't think so.
It's not exactly the same, right?
Yeah,
there's a little bit of a difference. It says don't go near that thing. So what Allah is talking about this shameful deed is, you know, and you all are getting more mature, you know, there are certain relationships and certain things that we cannot do in Islam, right? With the opposite, you know, so all of you here are girls, so there's some things you can't do with boys, right? There's some things. We know that there's people out there in your schools that you know of, maybe in your public schools, that are having, you know, boyfriends that are maybe, you know, touching them in ways they're not supposed to, that are maybe like looking at them in ways they're not supposed to, or saying things to each other until there's like some feelings which are considered haram in Islam, okay? And so Allah is not just saying not to finally do that thing. Allah is saying don't go near that thing. Don't even go near it. So there's a lot of precautions that Muslims take that Allah has given us so that we don't even go near that thing. Okay, so one of those is to lower your gaze. So lowering the gaze is a commandment in the Quran, right? So if you are lowering your gaze, then that's one step that you're not taking towards this haram act, right? So for a young girl to have a boyfriend, for example, right? For a young girl to have a boyfriend, she would have to probably, you know, see that boy and you know, maybe talk to him and stare and, you know, like have conversations with him, get to know him. These are all steps towards having that boyfriend, right? But if you're really trying to follow Islam, then you won't even go near those steps. And so you won't be stuck in that position where suddenly, you know, okay, you have a crush on somebody and then now you're just madly in love with them or something, because you've done so many things, you know, taken so many steps towards that person, right? And so then you're already in this really haram situation. But here Allah is saying don't even go near that. So for example, let's say if you're just on your, you know, as you're getting older, you're going to see that a lot of people have these social media accounts. But what you're supposed to really do is like lower your gaze. You're not supposed to be like looking at everything that comes in front of you. And that's for men as well. It's for women and men. It's for girls and boys. You're not supposed to look at every single thing. Actually, when we were growing up and we didn't have to deal with social media, you know, and it was, you know, practicing Islam was a certain, you know, there was a certain standard. If somebody you know, not dressed properly is coming on front of you, you know, you just lower your gaze, you turn. If we had a television show, something happens, like there's a smoochy scene or something, you just turn the channel, you know, you do something. Nowadays, you know, unfortunately, people are getting far from Islam. It doesn't mean Islam is changing, it's still haram, but people are getting far from Islam, and they just think you're supposed to keep looking at something wrong. But Allah is telling us don't go near that, because you're getting sins, right, when you're doing that. And then, you know, imagine a young boy, for example. If he doesn't lower his gaze, he keeps on looking at everything on front of him, then he's going to keep getting used to seeing these women that are not dressed properly, right? So I'm having a mature conversation with you because you all are getting more mature. And, you know, nowadays with all this media and everything out there, it's just becoming, you know, like people think they just have to keep looking at the screen and keep on looking. No, you know, back when it was like, you know, human beings, at least, you know, it's like, you know, you look down, you look away. If it's a bad, something commercial comes on, you just, you know, you can, those who are thinking about this, they can switch the channel or turn it off or whatever. But it still applies, like when you have all these, you know, YouTubes and all these commercials coming, when you have social media in front of you, don't just keep looking at something that's wrong, okay? Because, you know, Shaitan in the other surah, we talked about last time that he promised he's going to come in front, behind, side. He's going to come inside of us in a way that we're not even aware of it, okay? And so that's one big way Shaitan is going to come inside of us. So, you know, I just want to, you know, touch base a little bit with that, because this is an important issue. And then in this section, there's many, many things that Allah mentions as rules. I'm just going to mention some of them. But for example, in verse 34, it says, do not tamper with an orphan's property before he reaches the age of full strength and maturity, unless you plan to improve it. We've mentioned this before. Allah says it's a very big sin to mess up with an orphan, okay? Because we know that an orphan doesn't have anybody remembering him or her. They don't have anyone to go back and refill, or you know, if something breaks, the parent is going to run and fix it. They don't have anyone, right? I mean, whatever their parents may or may not have left for them, that's all they have. So it's a very big deal in Islam not to mess up with an orphan. So if you know somebody who's an orphan, be extra careful around them, you know? Sometimes in every family, you know, somebody has somebody, a young child, their father died or whatever, you know, just be careful, you know, and also their feelings might be more, you know, sensitive, or they might feel like they're, you know, missing out on something in life. It says also fulfill every agreement, for every agreement that you make will be asked about on the Day of Judgment. As Muslims, we need to fill our trusts and our agreements. We don't just go around saying things, you know, this, I promise this, I do, and then we just don't fulfill them. True Muslims, your word matters, and you have to fulfill your agreements. And then it says also in 35, give full measure to your customers when you measure for them, and weigh with accurate scale, for that's best in achieving good results. Very, very important, okay? Very, very important, because, you know, as Muslims, only a non-believer or someone who does not have taqwa can just get away with mismeasuring and cheating people and shortchanging. But a true believer is always going to give the, you know, fear Allah. They're always going to fear Allah and give the proper measurement. If anything, give more, right? You owe somebody, at least give them how much they're owed. I mean, Allah is not asking you to give more, but, you know, never give less, because that little bit less is going to come back and get you, you know, in the Day of Judgment, if not earlier. Also in verse 53, it says, tell my servants they should only speak of good things, for Shaitan tries to make divisions among them. Shaitan is the obvious enemy of humanity. Try to only say good things or be silent. And then on verse 71, one day we're going to call you out, the leaders of every people. Those who receive their records in their right hand will read their records. So in the Kahoot game, there's a question that if you're righteous in the Day of Judgment, when we get our book, okay, everyone has their personal book. Aren't you special? You have your personal book being written for you. The angels are writing that, and they're writing everything you did. So whoever is righteous and has a Jannah as their destination, they will already receive their record in their right hand. And those who are not righteous, who have a bad future in akhirah, they will receive in their left hand. So you should know that the righteous will receive their record in their right hand. It says next in, okay, so we are going to move on to Surah Al-Kahf. Surah Al-Kahf is the 18th surah in the Quran, and it says what in verse 7 to 8, whatever riches and distraction that we placed in the earth are but a dazzling display by which we test them in order to bring out those whose conduct is best. In the end, we're going to reduce whatever is upon the earth as dry dust. Once again, anything we have in this world, anything, it's a test for us. And it's placed as a dazzling display, okay? It's gonna be like we're tempted with it every day of your life, okay? You're gonna be tempted with something. And remember, that's a test, from Allah to see who is the best in conduct. And there's 4 stories here in Surah Al-Kahf that we'll just touch on. These are 4 different stories which talk about different things that humanity goes through. And so, for example, the story of the sleepers of the cave, these are young people, that is a trial of their faith, okay? The story of the man who owns 2 gardens, that's a trial of their wealth. The story of Musa and Khidr is a trial of knowledge, and the story of Dhul Qarnayn, the righteous king, is a trial of power. So I'm going to very quickly touch base with that, inshallah, while we have time. So interestingly, everyone here is young, right? It says, when the young people fled from persecution to the cave, they said, our Lord, be merciful to us and resolve our situation in the most appropriate way. So there were some young people back in the times who decided to that it was very hard for them to practice Islam in their own society. So what they did, their society made it so difficult for them that they thought that they need to flee somewhere else just to preserve their faith. So they literally left for the sake of Allah. They gave up the comforts of their life. They gave up everything. They had their life ahead of them, okay? They were the young people, but look how pure their iman and look how strong their iman was, that it says when the young people fled from persecution, they said, our Lord, be merciful to us, resolve our situation in the most appropriate way. So very, very beautiful reminder. When I was growing up and we had youth group, these are the verses from Surah Kahf that we would print on our t-shirts, because it was the youth who would stand up, for their Lord. And sometimes old people, they become weak in their faith, or sometimes, they mingle their desire for, the dunya or this or that. But young people, they can see things clearly sometimes. And when they have iman, they have the potential to have very good iman. So look at these young people who are examples for all the young people. It says that we're telling you, so in in verse 13, it says, we're telling you the story truthfully, for they were the young people who believed in their Lord, therefore we increased them in guidance. If you're a young person and you want to go in the right path, Allah is going to help you until you keep on getting stronger. Look, mashallah, so many of the young people that are scholars and speakers nowadays, mashallah, they had that intention from when they were really young, and they kept going, and Allah kept on helping them. So you have all of these really amazing young people who are doing great things, mashallah. They're trying to please Allah in so many ways. And so it says, and by the way, there's a hadith that on the Day of Judgment, which could be very long, like 50,000 years or more in our time, there's 7 types of people who are going to be shaded when there's going to be no shade. I mean, on that day, we're going to be drowning in our own sweat. One of the types of people is the young person who still practice Islam in their youth, because when you're young, that's when all the temptations come. That's when, everyone is giving you peer pressure, right? That's when, you're going through so many changes and it's so much more tempting to do stuff. So it's harder. So a young person is going to have a special shade in the Day of Judgment, that young person who chose to follow Islam. And so what happened is these young people, they left their vicinity and went somewhere for the sake of Allah. They went into a cave, and what Allah did is He made a miracle out of them. They went to sleep. They had a dog. They went to sleep, and when they went to sleep, they didn't die. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept them alive, but kept them sleeping. And in this part, it tells us that they were sleeping like 309 or so years. And Allah miraculously had them kind of flipping to their side so that way they wouldn't get, too much on one side, right? And it says that if you saw them, you would have thought they were awake, but they were asleep when we turned them on their right side and their left side while their dogs stretched out his 2 forelegs at the entrance. So this is the story of the youth who were in the cave. It says, we've been here a day. So when they woke up, and by the way, when I visited Jordan, I got a chance to actually visit the place, which is said to be this spot. So it's a very small little cave, and this is the place where they think that this story takes place. However, that's a side note. It says, we've been here a day, maybe part of a day at most, they answered. But after a long discussion, they agreed they weren't sure. So when they got up from sleep, they didn't know what happened. They didn't realize hundreds of years had passed, and then they felt hungry. So they needed to go back to the town, and they were kind of like, what happened? What happened? And then basically they went to the town where they tried to pay for some food. They found out that money was obsolete. And then they came to realize that they were in a totally different time, a totally different place, okay? And so, this is an example. It says some other things that it says about it. It says, after the youths grew old and died and people disagreed among themselves about how best to commemorate their case. Let's talk about this other verse. It says, others say there were 5 with their dog being the 6th, but they're just guessing about what they haven't seen. Others say there were 7 with their dog being the 8th. Say to them, my Lord knows best their exact number, and only a few know for sure how many they were. Don't get drawn into arguments about this, but rather only on topics that have clear resolution. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us some of these details in the story. And as every time you hear the story, you're going to hear the same things. But, we don't know every detail of the story, perhaps because those details were not important. Basically, we know that these were youth who went for the sake of Allah, and this was a miracle that happened. And in the next verse, on 23, a Kahoot question as well. It says, never say of anything, I plan to do it tomorrow, without saying, inshallah. So don't ever say that you're sure about anything, because we cannot be sure. It's only Allah who knows everything, right? So when we say that we're planning to do something, we really need to say, inshallah. So that's right here in the Quran, and that's a Kahoot question, so I hope you get it. So moving on to, yes, a very beautiful verse. It says, keep your soul content with those who call upon their Lord in the morning and the evening, seeking his face. Don't let your eyes pass beyond them, desiring the flashy glitter of this world's life. Believe me, this verse is so helpful even as an adult in my age, and it's going to help you forever. But what does that mean, keep your soul content with those people? So think about how everybody wants to be friends with somebody, right? Or, everybody wants some place in society, but sometimes we get disappointed with the people around us. Sometimes we feel hurt. Sometimes we may be going with the wrong crowd, a crowd that's not good for us. Allah keeps telling us, and this is a beautiful reminder, keep your soul content with who? Not with necessarily the popular people or the rich people or the fashionable people or whatever. That's not the definition of who we should be hanging out with. Keep your soul content and call upon, with people who call upon their Lord in the morning and the evening. Okay? So even if those people may be like the uncool, unpopular, unknown people, they may be the ones considered backward. They may be, the people who don't have all the cool stuff or whatever. Like, they may be people who you have to go out of your way to know them. But those people who remember Allah all the time and they have that love and fear of Allah, those are the ones that you should be choosing and looking for to be your close companions. It says, do not let your eyes pass beyond them, desiring what? The flashy glitter of this world's life. Because see, the ones who remember Allah, those are going to be the ones who are your true friends. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to tell you to do wrong things. They're going to be good for you and for your soul. But once you go past that and you go to others, believe me, like friends that you have only for the dunya, those friends are going to go away. You could fight about a tiny thing. You might be friends for 10 years. You fight about a tiny thing of the dunya, and that friendship might be over forever. or they start pressuring you, or they find somebody else who fills their desire better and they just forget about you. Always choose to be with those people. I know one person, I have my maternal grandmother, even though she's so rich, like she's a millionaire, she always chooses to be with the poorest people. And she always brings very poor people in her house and hangs out with poor people all the time. She doesn't like hanging out with rich people because of this exact reason. Because it's the poor people who have really true iman and taqwa and remember Allah. But the rich people, they want to follow the fashion, they want to break the rules when they need to, they want to just follow what's going on, in the world, and they forget Allah. So she always says that I always want to be with poor people, and mashallah, that's she's able to do that. And then in verse 30, as for those who believed and did what was morally right, we're never going to lose track of the reward of anyone who did good. So that little book that's being written for each person, that book goes from the beginning of when you become an adult all the way until your last breath. And so Allah doesn't forget the good stuff that you do, okay? It says, for them are everlasting gardens beneath which rivers flow. They'll be adorned with gold bracelets while wearing embroidered robes of green silk. We're going to have fashionable clothes and jewelry in Jannah if we get there. It says they will relax within the garden. So, in other translations, Allah tells us that we will get to relax with, companions, right? In the garden, people who you do love, right? It says how wonderful a payment of an excellent place to rest. Okay, I'm getting worried that my Zoom meeting is going to end. So I need to quickly go to the next 3 stories and the Kahoot game. So there's a story of a gardener who bragged. There was 2 gardens and 2 men. And long story short, what happened is it's an example of one of the men had gratefulness. He acknowledged the greatness of God. He acknowledged that Allah is the one who gave him the beautiful garden and that Allah has the power to take it away whenever he wants, right? And, the other person didn't think about Allah. He just got arrogant and proud and thought it was that he was just the man, and he became very proud. And basically what happened is, that man's garden got completely destroyed. And then he realized that he shouldn't have had that attitude. That was wrong. There's another story, okay, of Musa and Khidr. So in this story, basically, Musa alayhi salam was looking for somebody in the world who had more wisdom and knowledge than him. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a companion who told Musa, okay, you can travel with me and be with me, but you really have to be very patient. You cannot ask me too many questions. But then Musa alayhi salam, basically, he would forget and slip up. He would keep asking him questions about different situations that did not make sense at that moment. And basically what happens is later this Khidr tells him that, no, this is the reason I did this. This is the reason I did this. For example, they got on a boat. This man, this wise companion, put a hole in the boat. Why? Musa was like, what are you doing? Why are you putting a hole in the boat? And this man is like, look, I asked you to have patience. And because Allah gave him a certain knowledge that if they would have kept the boat going, there's an evil ruler who was going to destroy them. So it's better that they don't get to the evil ruler. There was another part where there was a very evil son, but with righteous parents. So this wise man was given the allowance to kill that son. And Musa is like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And the wise man is telling him, didn't I tell you to be patient? And he finds out that if they would have let this child live, he was going to really hurt the parents. So the parents got a different child instead. Okay, so there's stories like this. There's another story about Dhul Qarnayn, who was a powerful and righteous ruler. And this is a story which we may have to go back and touch base on that tomorrow. We have 3 minutes on the Zoom call. I just want to make sure we get to our Kahoot game. So I'm going to very quickly go to our Kahoot game, inshallah. So there's 4 stories. Remember that there's 4 stories that are in Surat Al-Kahf. I'll post it, and I'm going to share my screen with you. I think we've talked about all of the Kahoot questions by now. Hold on, share my screen, Kahoot, classic. Okay, so everybody get your Kahoot ready. Let's Let's do this very quickly so we don't get cut off in 2 minutes.
Miss
So
Rita,
the
can
game
you
pin
give
is
me a
251
second?
7986.
Computer's
Yes, honey.
dead.
What did you say?
Can you give me a second? My computer is dead.
Oh, okay. 251 7986. Everyone on there, I see 5 players. 251 7986. Okay, I'm going to start because we may get cut off at 3:40. Bismillah. All right, the first question is, there's only 8 questions. 1 of 8. How many stories are in Surah Kahf? We just talked about this. How many stories are in Surah Kahf? Is it 2, 4, 6, or 8? Very, very good. It is 4. The next question, true or false? Musa had more wisdom and knowledge than Khidr. Musa had more wisdom and knowledge than Khidr. False. He did not have more wisdom and knowledge than Khidr. Khidr had more. Number 3, true or false? The lesson from the story of 2 gardens is we should be proud of our accomplishments. The lesson from the story, is that true or false? We should be proud of our accomplishments. So that is false. We should be humble and give the credit to Allah. Okay? We should be humble and give the credit to Allah. What must we say about our plans for the future? Should we say Subhanallah, MashaAllah, Subhanallah, or Insha'Allah? Oops, there's 2 of the same question. Okay, Insha'Allah. Very, very good. Number 5, it was the blank who believed in their Lord. We talked about this. Was it old people, Gog and Magog, youth, or orphans? It was the who believed in their Lord. In the story of, in Surah Kahf, it was the youth. Very, very good. Excellent, excellent. Y'all are doing great, mashallah. I see some winners. Number 6, on the day of judgment, the righteous will receive their records in which hand? Which hand? The right or the left? The right or the left? Very good. In the right hand. And the last question, Bismillah, number 7. Oh, okay. In Surah Isra, Allah commands kindness to who? Allah commands kindness to animals, parents, plants, or children. Remember, we talked about this at the beginning. Allah commands kindness to parents. Excellent. Oh, and I think there's one more question. Very, very good. Do not come near what kind of deeds we said? We talked about the tree. Complicated, unfashionable, shameful, or unpopular. What kind of deeds we cannot come near? Do not come near shameful deeds. Okay, power, power, power. Y'all are awesome. Y'all are winners. MashaAllah. Look, even our 3rd place got 8 out of 8. Asma Islam, I'm proud of you. 2nd place, Fatima. And I know more of you got good scores. And the 1st place is Aisha Sayyid. I'm proud of you. Our thing ends. I'm gonna, and I also see some runner-ups. I'm gonna say a quick dua. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Shadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayhi wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Y'all are awesome. Thank you for doing the challenge last week of praying 2 rakats. We'll talk about a new challenge tomorrow, okay? Same time, same place, 3 o'clock. I think they started using passwords. So I'm gonna send you, the password for tomorrow, inshallah. All right. Take care, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.